Data aggregation is done to provide data summaries which help in examining trends, making comparisons, or revealing insights that might not be observable when the same data is viewed in isolation. In this exercise, we look at aggregating data using Excel pivot table. We'll also see how to use few Excel features such as color scales, spark lines, and data bars to visualize the aggregated data for insights. Let's begin the exercise. So the first step is data cleanup. Let's have a look at our data. This is the data that we have. This is the COVID-19 data. It has new cases, total cases for these countries, new cases on each day, new deaths on each day. So we'll be performing the aggregation on this COVID-19 data. But before we perform any sort of analysis, we see there are lots of missing values. So we'll first have to remove these missing values before any analysis that we could perform on this data. So we see that there are lots of empty columns. Let's remove these empty columns first. We don't need these columns. Let's remove this column too. And for this tutorial, we'll focus on new cases column. So we'll aggregate the data for new cases based on different countries, based on different dates. And so we also see lots of missing values here for new deaths, total deaths, new cases, smooth. We don't need these values. Let's remove it. Let's remove these columns too. So now that we have performed some basic data cleanup, which was removing columns with empty values, and next one is to remove rows with empty values. So since we'll be performing an analysis on this column, we don't want any empty values here in this column. So an easy way to look for blank cells in this column and delete the entire row is to first select the entire column, go to find and select, then you go to special, select blanks, click OK. So this will locate all the blank values in the given selected column. All you do then is right click, delete entire row. This deletes the entire row. So hopefully there are no more blank cells for this column, new cases. Now that's done. So our data cleanup is done. Let's copy and paste it here in step 1. So our data cleanup is done. Now the next step is data manipulation. Let's try to create week, month and year columns from the date column. So let's copy this data, put it in the sheet step 2. And our goal here is to aggregate the data. And for aggregation, you need some columns that we can aggregate on. For example, location is a good attribute that we can aggregate on. We can aggregate new cases based on different locations, different countries. Similarly, we can use dates. But a better way to use date would be to extract week, month and year from this date value so that we can aggregate the new cases for every week, for every month and for different years. So before we do some data manipulation, let's first make this into an Excel table. So how do you make it an Excel table? To make it this an Excel table, you go to insert here at the top, go to insert and select table. This automatically selects your entire data range. Just check this because the table has headers. Click OK. And now your data becomes a table. We made this a table because table has some very good features. It automatically comes with filter options. And when you try to enter a formula for any columns, You don't have to drag the formula for all the rows. It automatically does it for the entire column. Let's see, we'll actually come across the importance of making this into a table now. So let's extract the week, month and year from date column. Let's create 3 new columns. Insert. So one would be week, the other would be month, third one would be year. So we have these 3 new columns. So to extract the weeks, we use the Excel function weeknum, and let's give this date value, comma, and the week starts with a Sunday. Let's give 1 and click enter. See, as you saw, the function got applied to all the rows. So this is a feature that the Excel table provides you, but we don't have the values that we require. We need the weeks in terms of week 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. So the problem is that if you go to home, you see the data type is of type date. We don't need this to be of type date. It has to be of type number, and we don't need the decimal places. Let's remove the decimal places. Okay, now let's extract month. We'll use the text formula. It takes 2 values, 2 parameters. One is the value, comma, the format. We want it in month mm format. Enter, get it. Now let's get the year. Similar Excel function text, and this is our format y. So we have our week, month and year, and this is the data manipulation part. Now the third one is color scales. So let's create a new sheet. Step 3. Let's copy our Excel table. So color scale is an Excel feature that helps us identify clusters. For example, if we are trying to analyze the new cases column, color scales will help you identify clusters in new cases. You might find clusters of dates when there were very high new cases. There are clusters when there were very low cases. So color scales helps you do that. Let's see how to use color scales to identify clusters in this column. It's very simple to do that. Let's select this column, new cases. Let's go to conditional formatting, color scales, more rules, and let's just go for 3 color scale. So let's change these colors. So as you see, based on this setting, the lowest value in the new cases will get the red color. As we move from low to mid values, we'll move from the red to yellow spectrum, and from mid to high we'll move from the yellow to green spectrum. So this will actually fill these respective colors in the new cases column based on the values, but we want the new cases to be at the lowest value, and when the new cases are low, it's something good, it's a green signal for us. So let's change the color from red to green, and when the new cases are high, it's actually a bad indicator. Let's make that red. So now this seems good. Let's click OK. So there you have your entire column of new cases gets filled with the respective colors. Let's just increase the width of this column, and you see the real value of color scales comes into play when you actually zoom out. So if you zoom out from this, you can see these clusters. So initially there are clusters of dark green, and then we move from the green to the yellow spectrum, telling us that we are moving from low number of new cases to slightly higher number of new cases. And we see here patches of red telling us clusters of high cases. So if we keep moving down, you see clusters of red are increasing. There are no more clusters of green. So here you see clusters of yellow, clusters of red. So as you see, these color scales helps you identify clusters of data, and it's very useful in getting an overall picture. So if you zoom out, it gives you an overall picture and helps you in identifying clusters. Now that we are done with step 3 color scales, let's go to step 4 and create a pivot table. So to create a pivot table, let's first go to Insert, Pivot Table, and we need to select the table. Click on this and go to your table. So an easier way to select the entire table is to use the shortcut key Ctrl Shift down. It selects all the rows, and the right arrow selects all the columns. And then you can either create the pivot table in a new worksheet or in the existing worksheet. Let's go with the worksheet that we selected earlier. Click OK. Here you have the empty pivot table template. So what you're trying to do here is to aggregate the data in terms of new cases for every country on a weekly basis. So how many new cases does each country get on a weekly basis? To make that aggregation, let's first look at location. This will give us all the countries. So you have all the countries, and for the weeks, let's put the weeks in column. This gives us different countries and the different weeks. And what values do we get here? Here we need the new case values, the new cases. To get the new case values, let's go to new cases, drag it and drop it in this value section. So this automatically gives you sum of new cases. So what we find here is the sum of new cases per day every week. So these cases were summed for every day, and we get that for each and every week here. There are also other values of new cases that we could have here. We could have, if you go to sum of new cases, click value field settings, you could either have average cases per week, maximum cases in the week, minimum cases in the week. There are different ways in which you can summarize the new cases on the weekly basis. Let's stick with sum. Let's click OK. Let's isolate this data by the years. Let's drag and drop the year column here. So we get it in this format, the year followed by the countries and the year followed by the countries. So this gives us an aggregated data of the new cases for every country on a weekly basis for year 2020 and year 2021. But we don't get an immediate picture of how the cases are actually moving throughout these weeks. So that's where the Excel feature called Sparkline helps you find a trend in the data. So we can create the trend using the Excel Sparkline feature. So to create these sparklines, let's go to Insert, Let's go to line. Let's select the data range. First, let's select for the year 2020. Let's go till the end. We don't need the grand total. Let's stop here. And then we need the location range. It's for all these 5 countries. And click OK. You have the spark lines. And a similar thing can be done for the year 2021. An easier way is to just copy it and paste it. You have the trend lines for year 2021. Let's make these spark lines more visually appealing. Let's go to spark lines, spark line color. We can increase the weight of these spark lines. We can also introduce markers telling us when was the highest point in the trend, when was the lowest point in the trend. So we go here at the top, high point, low point. Let's increase the width of this column. Let's increase the heights too. So here you go, the trend line. So you can clearly see in year 2021 how the cases, new cases actually increased. For Brazil, it increased much more earlier. Europe, there was an increase. The high point came a little later. And then for India, you can see the trend. And in year 2021, in Brazil, it was already high. Europe, it was already high. And in 2021, India, there was no cases in the beginning. But as we moved on around the midpoint of the year, we see that we reached the highest point in the trend. So this helps us quickly spot trends in data which might not have been visible for us when we looked at the pivot table. Now that we are done with spark lines, let's look at what data bars are. The data bars is a feature in Excel which provides a very easy and a quick way for a graphic illustration of a column of numbers. So to implement data bars, let's first introduce a pivot table. Let's go to step 4, data bars. Let's go to the sheet and let's insert the pivot table in a similar manner as we did for spark lines. Go to insert, pivot table, select the table range. Where was our table? So we had a table here. Let's select our table, use the shortcut key, Control Shift down arrow and right arrow. This selects the entire table and the output is in the existing worksheet. We have our pivot table. Now previously, we aggregated the data for every country on a weekly basis for year 2020 and 2021. Now for data bars, what we'll do is, let's aggregate it for every month and for all the 5 countries that we saw earlier. So let's put the month in rows. This gives us all the 12 months. And let's put the location countries in columns. So for all these months in these countries, what values do we want here? We want the new cases for every country in each of these months. So let's drag new cases and drop it in values section. Again, it gives us the sum of new cases in each of these months, but this is for both the years put together. Let's separate the years. Let's drag the year and drop it here, but we don't want it in this format. We don't want the month followed by years for every month. Let's drag the year above the month. This seems to be a better format. Now that we have our pivot table, let's introduce data bars. So data bars give a graphic illustration for a column of numbers. So first let's select the column Let's go to conditional formatting, data bars, and select gradient. So here you see you get a beautiful illustration of a wave. You can see the wave of new cases for the country Brazil. Now we can also do this for all the countries. Let's do the same for the year 2021, but let's make these of equal widths. And this time let's go for solid fill. So there you have the data bars. You can clearly see the wave of new cases. So for Brazil, the wave started in the month April. It reached its peak in July, August, then there was a decrease, then it increased. And in year 2021, you can see the wave. For Europe, you see the wave. For India, it started around April, reached its peak in September of 2020, then decreased. And again in the year 2021, it reached its peak in the month of May. So this is how we use data bars for a very beautiful graphic illustration.